In the early 2000s, Victoria's Secret didn't just sell lingerie, they sold a dream. A $7 billion empire built on angels, glitter, and an annual fashion show that pulled in 12 million viewers more than the NBA Finals. They controlled nearly 33% of the entire US lingerie market. But between 2016 and 2020, that dream curdled into a corporate nightmare. Market share collapsed, the stock price cratered, and more than $4 billion in brand value simply evaporated. The problem wasn't that the world stopped buying bras, it was that Victoria's Secret was being run with the 20th century mindset in a 21st century reality. For decades, the brand's North Star was sexy, specifically a version of sexy defined by one man in his 80s, Les Wexner. While competitors pivoted toward comfort, inclusivity, and real bodies, Victoria's Secret doubled down on fantasy. They protected the angel image at all costs and, in doing so, failed to notice their customers had already left the room. By 2019, the damage was undeniable. Fashion show ratings were down 75% from their peak, same-store sales were in freefall, and the company shuttered 250-plus stores in a single year. This wasn't a trend shift, it was a total rejection of the brand's core identity. At Metric Mercy, we're performing the autopsy on a brand that was too sexy to survive. Before we break down the exact moment the angels lost their wings, hit the subscribe button. We decode the metrics behind the world's biggest business blunders. You're watching Metric Mercy. While Victoria's Secret was perfecting its push-up bras and glitter-bombed runways, a silent revolution was happening in the background. In 2014, a small rival called Aerie, owned by American Eagle, made a radical decision. They stopped retouching their models. No Photoshop, no airbrushing, and no angels. They launched the #AerieReal campaign, focusing on real bodies and comfortable bralettes over rigid underwires. Victoria's Secret leadership dismissed it as a fringe trend, but the metrics told a very different story. Aerie sales began growing at 20% to 30% per year, while Victoria's Secret remained stagnant. The data was screaming that the male gaze was no longer the primary driver of lingerie sales. Women were shopping for themselves, prioritizing comfort, fit, and inclusivity. Then came Third Love, an online-only startup, attacking Victoria's Secret directly. They offered 78 different bra sizes, more than double what you'd find in a typical VS store. Using data-driven fit finders, they solved the one problem Victoria's Secret ignored. Nearly 80% of women were wearing the wrong bra size. Victoria's Secret didn't have a data problem, they had an ego problem. Instead of adapting, the brand fought back with the only weapon it knew more sexy. In 2014, they launched the Body campaign, featuring 10 nearly identical, ultra-thin models under the tagline "The Perfect Body." The backlash was immediate and global. Petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures demanded an apology. This was the moment the value gap became a values gap. Customers didn't just find the products uncomfortable, they found the messaging offensive. The moat that once protected the empire was being filled in by its own critics. Victoria's Secret was losing the battle for the fitting room, but the worst was still ahead. Drop a comment below. When did you realize Victoria's Secret was out of touch? Stick around because next, we reveal the one interview that effectively ended the angel era. In November 2018, as the brand was already struggling with declining sales, Chief Marketing Officer Ed Rozek sat down for an interview with Vogue. It was intended to be a promotional piece for the upcoming fashion show, but it quickly turned into a public relations suicide note. When asked why the show didn't feature plus-size or transgender models, Rozek's response was blunt: "No, I don't think we should." Because the show is a fantasy, he doubled down, claiming that no one had any interest in a plus-size special. In a world shaped by the Me Too movement, Rozek's fantasy sounded like a relic from a different century. Rozek didn't just alienate the audience, he took a direct swipe at the competition, specifically Third Love, saying, "We're nobody's third love, we're their first love." Third Love CEO Heidi Zak didn't stay silent. She took out a full-page ad in the New York Times, penning an open letter that called out the shocking, derogatory statements and accused Victoria's Secret of selling a male fantasy to women. The hashtag boycott Victoria's Secret began trending globally. Within days of the interview, Victoria's Secret CEO, Jan Singer, resigned. The internal structure was cracking and the angels were losing their wings in real time. The fallout was immediate. The 2018 fashion show The Very One Rozek was promoting saw its viewership plummet to an all-time low of 3.3 million viewers, down from 5 million the year before. The fantasy was no longer profitable. By November 2019, the company made a move that was once unthinkable. They canceled the Victoria's Secret fashion show entirely. After 24 years, the runway was dark. The brand wasn't just losing its CMO, it was losing its primary marketing engine. The fantasy was dead, but the nightmare was just beginning. Stick around because next, we reveal the dark connection to Jeffrey Epstein that finally brought the empire to its knees. Hit the like button and subscribe to Metric Mercy for more forensic deep dives. For years, one of the biggest mysteries in the fashion world wasn't a design secret, it was a financial one. How did a man like Jeffrey Epstein, with no clear background in high finance, manage the multi-billion-dollar fortune of Les Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret? Epstein wasn't just an advisor, he was given power of attorney over Wexner's entire life. But the connection went far beyond bank accounts. In 2019, a dark reality emerged. Epstein had been allegedly using his ties to the brand to lure young women, posing as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret to gain their trust. The fantasy the brand sold on the runway had a horrifying shadow behind the scenes. When the Epstein scandal broke wide open in 2019, Victoria's Secret was already on life support. This was the final blow to the brand's moral authority. While the company insisted Epstein was never an employee, the public couldn't ignore the facts. Epstein lived in a $20 million Manhattan mansion previously owned by Wexner and flew in a private jet also provided by the billionaire. The brand that claimed to empower women was now inextricably linked to a man accused of the systemic abuse of women. Brand's stock price plummeted by 10% in a single week as investors realized the angel brand was now toxic by association. By early 2020, Les Wexner knew he had to get out. He reached a deal to sell a majority stake in Victoria's Secret to Sycamore Partners for $525 million of valuation that would have been unthinkable just 5 years prior, but then the pandemic hit. Sycamore Partners sued to back out of the deal, claiming that Victoria's Secret had breached the contract by closing stores and failing to pay rent during the lockdown. The golden brand was now so damaged that a private equity firm was willing to go to court just to avoid owning it. The deal collapsed, Wexner stepped down, and Victoria's Secret was left to face its ghosts alone. The empire was leaderless, the deal was dead, and the reputation was in ruins. Stick around for the final part, where we look at the desperate rebrand of 2021 and the 4 billion lesson every business must learn. Like this video if you think a brand can ever truly recover from a scandal this deep. In 2021, Victoria's Secret attempted the most drastic pivot in retail history. They officially retired the Angels and replaced them with the VS Collective, a group of high-achieving women including Megan Rapinoe and Priyanka Chopra Jonas. The glitter was gone, the wings were in storage, and the pink striped stores were being painted over with neutral tones. It was a complete ideological surrender. The brand that spent 40 years telling women how to be sexy was now desperately trying to show women they were empowered. But for many consumers, it felt less like a genuine change and more like a corporate survival tactic. The results of this identity crisis were catastrophic on the balance sheet. In 2015, the brand was worth nearly $28 billion as part of L Brands. By the time they were spun off as an independent company in 2021, their valuation had shriveled. They had lost over 15% of their total market share in 5 years. Even with the rebrand, sales in 2022 and 2023 continued to slip. dropping another 6% as they struggled to find a new audience without alienating their old one. Victoria's Secret had spent decades building a mode of fantasy, only to realize they had built a prison. The collapse of Victoria's Secret provides 3 brutal lessons for the modern market. First, the customer is the compass. If you ignore the evolving values of your core demographic, you aren't being consistent, you're becoming a fossil. Second, identity is not a product. You can change your models and your marketing, but if your product doesn't solve the customer's new problem like comfort and fit, the rebrand is just window dressing. Third, hubris has a high interest rate. Les Wexner and Ed Rozek believed the brand was bigger than the culture. They were wrong. At Metric Mercy, we don't look at the runway. We look at the results. Victoria's Secret is still fighting for its life, but the $4 billion lesson is already written in the ledgers. If you want to see which empire we dissect next, watch our autopsy on the $9 billion Gillette blunder right here. I'm Bizwiz at Metric Mercy, and the autopsy is officially closed.